For me, it was an invisible illness until it wasn't. Doctors found an ovarian cyst called an endometrioma. That word had sounded familiar. It was an indication of stage 3 endometriosis. Ah yes, that was a word I had heard before. It's a disease I couldn't define then, and until making this video, I still quite couldn't, even though 1 in every 10 women suffer from this mysterious disease. Who knew? Not us apparently, because the symptoms are disguised as normal. Endometriosis is a condition in which tissue that is similar to the inner lining of the uterus grows outside of the uterus. It can grow everywhere, on other organs too. It can even attach to the lungs. The tissue that grows acts like the inner lining of the uterus during the woman's cycle. So it thickens, it breaks down, and it bleeds every month. But it can't leave your body like normal tissue would during your cycle, causing a whole slew of issues and debilitating pain for women. Pain that is usually filed away under the broad and ever-expanding category of PMS symptoms.
When I started teaching at MIT, I actually had an appointment at Harvard Med School. I taught endocrinology, and the classic reference text had a small chapter on endometriosis. And here I'm going to read you a quote. This book was published in 1989. So doctors who are practicing today were trained with this. The typical patient with endometriosis will be a nulliparous patient in her late 20s or early 30s. Textbooks describe her as intelligent, egocentric, over-anxious, and a perfectionist. You know who that describes? That describes the people who actually get diagnosed. They're the ones who don't give up and they keep going to the doctor. So naturally, they're anxious, they're perfectionists, they're this, they're that. They have personality problems because they're like, something's wrong with me now, pay attention.
Unsurprisingly, the average diagnosis takes 8 years. And in that time, many women's endo gets out of control before they even know they have it. I'm the perfect candidate for someone who has finally been diagnosed. Late 20s, early 30s, someone who hasn't yet had a baby. But this isn't when it's believed to start. It's just when we often notice it or are able to explain what we're feeling. It actually starts way earlier in life.
Now, what about diagnostics? Why is it so hard to diagnose? I cannot shout loudly enough from the rooftops. It's a pediatric disease, and we don't think it's a pediatric disease. And by we, I mean probably 95% of clinicians. So your average GP doesn't know, your average nurse doesn't know, and even your average OBGYN doesn't know that it can have onset right at the start of your period. And this is why the patient voice on social media is incredibly important to have because you force them to think about it.
In the last few years, I've seen the conversation around conditions like PCOS and endometriosis explode across social media. I think it's a large part why we are finally able to recognize and define it. And it's also caused us to see just how widespread of a problem it is.
Maybe one day you're having fun with friends, you're dancing around the kitchen, you're having a great day, and then all of a sudden you're in debilitating pain and it feels like knives are being scraped across your abdomen and like there's barbed wire wrapped around your organs. I don't know how I convinced myself that that was normal. Probably because the people that I was made to feel like those were the people that I was supposed to trust, my medical professionals, teachers, parents, friends. When everybody tells you that something is normal and that you're just being overdramatic, many people just convince themselves that they're just being overdramatic.
For me, it looked like years of bad periods. My older sister told me I should look into endometriosis, but my response was always to downplay my symptoms. She does a good job of studying the human body. I didn't, so she called it way before I was smart enough to listen. I simply relied on social media and years of minimal education around PMS that simply reinforced that cramps are totally normal. I thought maybe I just had a low pain tolerance. But newsflash, severe pain during your period is not normal. In fact, period pain in general isn't normal.
This was just kind of one of those assumptions that is passed down from person to person. And even in our medical education, they don't ever say that pain is not normal. They actually, instead, they tell people, oh yeah, of course, you're gonna have PMS, you're gonna have pain. This is just a part of being a woman. But the reality is that's just your body speaking to you.
Now, why does that seem like that is the norm in terms of what I experienced with my friends and family growing up of everyone complain about different variations of painful periods?
I think it's because of the environment that we live in, the way that we've all been raised, what we're typically eating, the way that we're exercising, the way that we treat our bodies. So how many people do you know personally who don't drink any caffeine?
No one?
Exactly. The way I look at it is that if that's the baseline, that means that almost every single person is dehydrated. If you're dehydrated, your body is always looking for water. And if your body's looking for water, it's going to grab it from the easiest place that it can get water from, which is your gut. So if you're sucking back your water from your gut, what is in your gut? It's where all of the toxins are bound up by the liver and put in the gut to try and get them out of your system. So if you're sucking back your toxins and you continue to drink caffeine every day, then it makes sense to me that you would have an increasing amount of inflammation that is just going higher and higher and higher. If you add on top of that, majority of people love sweets. They're eating fast food. They're stressed. They're not breathing properly. They're not sleeping. All of that kind of adds up, and it leaves you in a place where it's super common to have PMS. It's super common to have painful periods and heavy bleeding and all of the things.
6 out of 10 cases of endo goes undiagnosed, which is presumably because women with endo don't even realize they have it. They thought it was normal. But in our toxin-overloaded world, our baseline for normal is completely out of whack. At 27 years old, thanks to doctors like her, and personally finally paying attention to my health with a whole new holistic lens, and also eager to get pregnant, my sister's comments from a decade earlier echoed in my mind. I had started dealing with a whole new pain that was no longer confined to my time of the month. Abdominal cramping almost daily on my left side, enough for me to finally, and grumpily, show up to an urgent care. From there, it was blood tests to a CT scan to an MRI, only to find I had an endometrioma overtaking my left ovary, and a tentative diagnosis of endometriosis that could only be officially diagnosed through laparoscopic surgery. I had heard of this surgery before. My feed is always full of new celebrities or influencers posting about the same condition and the unpleasant surgery that often followed. The surgery where doctors use laparoscopic technology to remove any adhesions or cysts. It's minimally invasive and typically reduces pain and eliminates all, if not most, of the endometriosis that has grown thus far. The surgery usually works unless the endometriosis has connected to other organs. For extremely severe cases of endo, women need additional, often life-altering surgeries, removing parts of other vital organs that may have been affected.
They cut me from hip to hip. Once they opened me up, they found that I had stage 4 endometriosis, frozen pelvis disease, and they said that it looked like someone had poured cement into my pelvis. Everything was just stuck together by so much scar tissue.
Though the symptoms and severity of each case differs, it seems like the initial treatment process is always the same. Doctors offer their favorite fix, the birth control pill.
The pill is the first line therapy because some people do respond to the pill, but there's a phenomenon that's very loosey-goosey called progesterone resistance. The cells in the affected tissue actually don't respond to progesterone. Other cells in your body are responding, so you get a headache, you gain weight, you have immune system changes, but the target tissue you're trying to affect is like, hey man, we put up a fence, we're done, we unplugged, we're not responding to progesterone. I think that there is really misunderstanding of this phenomenon and way too many people being prescribed progestins who are not going to respond in ways that really help them.
I was told to just get on the pill by multiple practitioners as a way to mitigate the pain, even though each one of those conversations began with me saying, I'd like to get pregnant this year. Make that make sense. It doesn't. Anyways, also it's ironic given that the pill, over time, can end up being ineffective as a long-term solution. Shocker. In my journey, the third doctor I spoke to was an endo-excision specialist. Thankfully, she didn't simply suggest the pill. She suggested excision surgery to remove all the endo and my rapidly growing cyst. It's worth shopping around, and in the world of endo, you will probably have to. There is so little known about the disease, especially by practitioners without specialized training.
It can be very difficult to diagnose because doctors are not, even if they're taking continuing medical education, it may not get into the weeds.
I never ended up going on that pill. And as you might have noticed, I'm pregnant with my first baby. Now, my endosurgeon had told me that I would be the most fertile within the first 6 months after surgery, before the endo begins to grow back. And thankfully, she was clearly right. But I've since come to realize just how miraculous my son truly is. According to the NIH, about 25 to 50% of infertile women have endometriosis, and 30 to 50% of women with endo are infertile. The CDC says that infertility among reproductive age women is on the rise. About 19% of women ages 15 to 49 who have not yet given birth experience infertility. These numbers are extremely alarming. As I've mentioned earlier, we also know how common endometriosis is. So if we care about the alarming infertility rates, heck, the alarming birth rates at large, we need to dig into what is happening with endometriosis because it is so common and is clearly a massive contributing factor to those numbers, whether women realize it yet or not. Just Google NAPRO technology physicians near me, and you will find physicians like Dr. Ruberu, who is treating issues like infertility and endometriosis by looking at the root cause of each individual woman. And the best part is, it's working.
Have you seen success with women who find out they have endo? Maybe they don't have a cyst or anything that needs immediately to be removed, but it's more just they know they have this condition now and that they've seen actual progress and relief.
Absolutely, because the first line of defense in our office is the dietary changes, and we talk about using some supplements. There's one supplement that's called N-acetylcysteine. There was a protocol done. It was a beautiful little study where they had women that had stage 4 endometriosis, so really severe endometriosis. And they had these women use NAC 900 milligrams twice a day, every Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, week upon week for 3 months. And they had half of the women in the study do this and the other half didn't. Every woman that used the NAC, at the end of the 3-month trial, they didn't do surgery because their pain was significantly improved, and even their endometriomas, so like what you were talking about, the cysts of endometriosis in the ovary, those had decreased in size, which is unheard of. Another one that's really amazing is the use of magnesium glycinate. So if you use magnesium glycinate every single night, and then a few days before your period, you double the dose. Usually the combination of both of those is enough to radically decrease the pain for most people.
Wow. Even hearing that the cysts could be, the endometriomas could shrink, mine was growing every time I would go to the doctor, and so it was freaking me out like it's gonna explode. Like it could only get bigger in my head. But that's really encouraging. I think that'll be encouraging to a lot of young women to hear that there are alternatives. So the supplements, are they over the counter, or are they like they have to be prescribed by a doctor?
No, they're all over the counter supplements. They're readily available to anybody. What is driving endometriosis? Endometriosis, fibroids, ovarian cysts, breast cysts, they all kind of fall into the same family in that they're all driven by excessive amounts of estrogen. But it's not that the people who have these illnesses are actually producing tons of estrogen themselves. The reason that there's excessive amounts of estrogen present is because you're not able to eliminate it properly. It all comes down to gut health and cleansing your body. So if you can radically change your diet, if you can eat things that don't contribute to the estrogen dominance. And there's lists of things. There's chemicals, xenoestrogens that we find in plastic water bottles, all of that sort of stuff.
We call it crunchy, right? If there's certain things, you use glass bottles instead of plastic, and there's reasons for that. And I think this is cool because it speaks to why there's this movement right now to shift to that, because of those disruptors in our diet and in our toxic load just in general. So specifically trying to avoid or at least get rid of the excess estrogen is something that women, especially with endometriosis, should be prioritizing.
Absolutely.
As someone dealing with this, and knowing that my endometriosis will likely begin growing back after my pregnancy, I feel extremely hopeful now knowing that there are things I can do to improve my health in the future.
There's absolutely so much hope. I truly believe that God created each of our bodies in such a way that they are capable of healing. It's just taking the time and having the willingness to be able to change your habits.
The lengths at which these doctors are going to understand where the heck this disease comes from and how to fix it is truly astounding. New forms of diagnostics are being developed. There's even new blood tests that can diagnose endo without the need for surgery. This is amazing progress. Research is finally being done, and women are finally being made aware of the symptoms of this disease. But while we wait for that research, holistic doctors are finding a host of promising treatments and lifestyle changes that we can get started on right away. It gives me hope that this invisible illness is finally being seen. Thank you so much for being here and watching this video. I hope you found it as informative and helpful as I did. If you want more underreported stories like this one, make sure to subscribe to this channel and also message us with any stories that you think we should investigate.